Good morning. Happy Black Philanthropy Day and welcome to the fourth installment of the Adaptive Philanthropy webinar series. I am Emily Thompson, Director of Donor Services at the Community Foundation. Before we start our program, I'd like to remind you that this, like all of our Adaptive Philanthropy sessions, will be recorded and the video will live on the CFGG website and on our social media. To help this session run efficiently, please mute your microphone, and I invite you to put any questions you have during the session in the chat box, and we will answer those questions at the end as time permits. We have a great lineup today as we recognize and celebrate Black giving in Greensboro, and I'm thrilled to be here to introduce you to our speakers. Mae Douglas, retired Executive Vice President of Cox Communications in Atlanta, now spends her time as an extraordinary community volunteer and philanthropist. Mae's volunteerism goal is to empower families living in poverty by ensuring they have access to education, employment, and childcare. She is also active in economic development projects and works to advocate for the elimination of bias, bigotry, and racism in her community. Welcome, Mae.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bishop Adrian Starks. Adrian serves as the senior pastor for the World Victory International Christian Center. In addition to serving on the board of directors at the Community Foundation, Adrian is a community volunteer who is an advocate for youth and disenfranchised persons in the Triad. Thank you for being here with us today, Bishop Starks. Our final speaker is the president of the Community Foundation, Walker Sanders. Walker has been instrumental in the realization of many community initiatives, including the Tanger Center for the Performing Arts, LeBauer Park, and Say Yes Guilford. In addition to these community initiatives, the foundation is focused on workforce development, housing, and strengthening the nonprofit sector through grant making, all under Walker's leadership. Today, our three speakers will discuss Black giving in Greensboro, an exciting new initiative with our very own Ethan Lindsay, Director of Community Philanthropy. Take it away, Ethan.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning to everyone. I want to say how excited I am as we are celebrating another Adaptive Philanthropy series, but we're also celebrating Black Philanthropy Month, as this coincides with August as Black Philanthropy Month, which is a fairly new celebration in the continuing celebrations of months that we celebrate different topics. Black Philanthropy Month was established 7 years ago by Jackie Copeland, and it's designed to elevate, inspire, and focus on the positive goings of Black philanthropy. And today we're going to actually spotlight the resilience and the resourcefulness and innovation of Greensboro's Black donor community. Especially, this is a timely conversation, as many of us know that we have been facing a global pandemic, which has become a public health crisis, but we've also been facing and managing another pandemic that many in the African-American community call racism. So one of the things that we've discovered in this recent pandemic is that it is made even more pronounced and revealed the disparities and inequities. But today we're going to focus less on those things, but we're going to talk about some exciting news and things that have been going on in Greensboro, well ahead of the pandemic and the recent social unrest. 5 years of work that we will highlight and celebrate and ask you to be a part of with us. So with that, I'd like to get this going because this is a conversation that's packed and we have a limited amount of time. First question I want to pose to you, Mae. The Community Foundation for the last 5 years has been engaging Black donors through our expanding community giving initiative and other activities. This has become a strategic focus because the presence of Black donors and other people of color, frankly, was not up to the point where it reflected the diversity of Greensboro. So we've set on a course to increase the presence of Black donors over the last 5 years in order to create more partnerships to reflect Greensboro, but also just to make the community foundation a better community foundation. May, you've played a key role in leading this effort. Would you share with us why this has been important to you?
Good morning, everyone. I'd be happy to, Ethan. First of all, I'm a product of the Black community here in Greensboro. I grew up in Southeast Greensboro in the 50s. So this community was segregated just like the rest of the country. So every part of my life was segregated. We lived in a Black community. I went to Black schools because we had not integrated yet, went to a Black church, and where we shopped were Black stores. Yet I had a very, very happy and a very positive childhood here. And I was nurtured by my family, my neighbors, my friends, my teachers, and spiritual leaders. So when I left high school and went to UNCG and started my career, I worked in the corporate sector for 37 years. And then 8 years ago, I returned to Greensboro. And I had never lost my connection with Greensboro because having grown up here and graduating from Dudley High School, some of you may be aware of the Dudley Consolidated Reunion. And it's probably second only to A&T's homecoming in terms of all of the classes from Dudley High School getting together every year to reconnect. And even when I lived in New York and Atlanta, I still came back for my high school reunion. So I have always had a strong connection to Greensboro. And so when I returned here, I wanted to make sure that in this phase of my life, that every member of our community had equal opportunities as I had growing up here, and that they also had a quality of life. The second reason that I became involved is that as I was engaged with Community Foundation and its expanding community giving initiative, one of our goals was to expand donors of color. And I will admit to you, I did not know a lot about philanthropy because I was a business person in the corporate sector, and other than my annual giving to a couple of charities, never really thought a lot about philanthropy. So I knew that I needed to expand my own knowledge about what philanthropy is, and I needed to do that as we were beginning to build our strategy through expanding community giving. So through you, Ethan, I was connected to community foundations who were part of the Kellogg cohort. And so I started to learn what other community foundations were doing as it related to communities of color. But I also attended several regional and national conferences and learning events at my own expense, not that Community Foundation paid for them, because again, I knew that I was on a learning curve. And I will have to say that it was through these learning events that I learned how powerful philanthropy is in terms of driving social changes in communities, and also the role that it can have in addressing disparities. And in a report that was called The State of the South in 2007, there were 3 stats that really just stuck with me. And they are that the South has 1/3 of the US poverty, it has 1/4 of the US population, but it only had 1/6 of the US philanthropic assets. And that really, really resonated with me and motivated me to want to do more in terms of my own personal philanthropy. But also I knew that as we were looking at our goal of expanding donors of color, the importance of philanthropy, as especially as related to Black philanthropy. And also, as I learned more about Southern philanthropy, this report also talked about that it was very traditional and it was on cruise control. that became an even greater driving force for me personally and a major stimulus in terms of my own personal engagement for the betterment of our community overall.
You may. Walker, I want to get you to answer the question that why has this been important to the Community Foundation, part of our strategy going forward and over the last 5 years?
Absolutely, thank you. It's hard to follow May. I want to congratulate May for all the work she's been doing, and Adrian for the work on expanding community giving. It's extremely inspiring for us to be able to be part of that. And when we got into this work, it was very intentional on the Community Foundation to begin looking at ourselves very authentically. And if you read our mission statement, to inspire giving, to maximize opportunities and strengthen the communities for present and future generations, and you read our vision statement talking about our vision for a city that's welcoming and a thriving place for all people to work together to enrich the lives for everyone. And we accomplish that by understanding what matters to our community, being a trusted partner that empowers others, shepherding successful projects that draw the community together, and helping diverse donors create impactful gifts. Well, that last statement in our vision, when we were looking at ourselves authentically, we were not doing that. If you looked at the assets of the Community Foundation, we're about a $250 million organization. We manage about 650 funds. We raise maybe $20 to $30 million every year in new gifts. We make about $15 to $20 million in grants out to the community. We have a very diverse board. We have really strong relationships throughout the community. But we realize less than 1% of our donors, even if that, were from communities of colors. And if we really wanted to be a community foundation, we needed to be thought of as a place for everyone to be able to use the Community Foundation for their philanthropy, not just a place that makes grants to diverse organizations that has a diverse board. We need to have a diverse donor base. And so we wanted to be very intentional. And this wasn't about us just going out and asking our Black friends to set up funds with us. We had to go on a journey of building some relationships and building trust within the community that we were an organization that the Black community could work with, not just as a place for grants, but also a place to help manage their philanthropy. And so this expanding community giving enabled us that opportunity to kind of begin on that journey. And it's been extremely successful. It's opened up the community of over 21 new funds have been established from communities of color. And those are all strong relationships that we look to build and further. It's still a small percentage of our total funds, and we're committed to making that number continue to grow. It's too important for us as an organization as we're working to make sure that we are a community foundation for all parts of Greensboro and for all donors in Greensboro.
Thank you, Walker. Adrian, would you care to respond to this question about the importance of this?
Certainly. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you to all of you for your time. Yes, I am Adrian Starks, and similarly, I have a story that lends well to why I would engage this kind of work. I'm not a native of Greensboro. I'm actually a native of Brooklyn, New York. I came to Greensboro to become a part of the North Carolina A&T football team and proudly won championships there and went on to marry a woman from Greensboro. I met a Dudley Panther, and she told me that she wanted to go to New York, so I understood, and I gladly made Greensboro our home. I can relate to Panther Pride as May described it, and you know, I'm enjoying both of those elements. We've raised our family here. We have 5 beautiful daughters, and I've been pastoring in the city for 18 years now. It's amazing to consider our condition as a community of people. So growing up in New York City, it's the city that never sleeps, the city that is known throughout the world. And yet I was in this microcosm that did not have privilege. One of the things that was amazing to my awakening was in the 4th grade, instead of being in our community school, the city opened up what's called open enrollment, and my mother bussed me out from our neighborhood school to a school that I had to ride the bus for an hour to reach. And it was then that I began to be awakened to my city that was foreign to me. I lived there, but there was so much about it that I was totally oblivious to. And that began an awakening. And I think my life has continued to be a series of awakenings. And if I can fast forward, recently we attended the Southeastern Council of Foundations with May and Ethan, and my wife had the opportunity to join me. And it was as though I was a 4th grader again, experiencing another incredible awakening, because I had no idea that philanthropy was transacting on that level. And to see how philanthropy was empowering great works. We had the privilege of hearing from Brian Stevenson. I believe many of you are familiar with him. Brian Stevenson is the Harvard-educated attorney that's doing incredible work in the justice arena, in the judicial arena. And to know his story and to know how philanthropy is impacting his work, and to see how his work is making such an incredible difference, just makes me appreciate a power through philanthropy that I believe I should have known about, but for whatever reason, I didn't know. And so it became even the more personal for me to not just learn, but to come to even be a Pied Piper that would communicate the message, that would let others know about this vehicle. You know, I think Ethan will begin to ask additional questions, and I don't want to get ahead of him, but I really am motivated. I'm excited because I think this can be a game changer. I really believe that a lot of us need just a little more information, a little bit more understanding. And I'm speaking about within the African-American community that can be so key in bringing us to the tipping point of change, meaningful change, lasting change. Change, it's like my mother. My mother made one simple decision, allowing me to leave that space and to be exposed to the happenings and the opportunities that were near me, but at the same time, very far from me. Okay. Just one simple decision, one little measure of exposure. And I think that as we begin to tell this story and show individuals that they too can be a part of lasting change, that it's going to catch on. It's going to make a significant. That's I really impactful. I realize that our lives are very small, and we have a finite amount of time that we can leave a legacy, and that's a huge part for me, right, to leave an incredible legacy.
Thank you. It's always hard to interrupt the bishop and the good friend, but I know you're about to burst it. Hold on to it. Hold on to it. It's coming. It's coming. But what you've done, if you segued, you all can imagine that passion. It's hard to, I get lost and say, oh, I got to moderate and get us going. But just to recap again, the questions we heard from you, Adrian, and it's something with expanded community giving that we've come to say is the importance of expose, educate, and engage. And you talked to the exposure to this world of philanthropy. You as well may have talked about that, how it opened your world to another level. And Walker clearly articulated the importance of this for the foundation also to be opening itself to a new world. So we've had that expose, educate, and engage. So with that, if we can keep going, here's the next question. As we're talking about focusing on resilience and resourcefulness and innovation in these current times, and we've talked about the overlapping pandemic of the public health crisis and racism. But would you share with our audience what type of deep transformative changes that our local donor community can take to advance equity? And that's be it regardless whether you're African American, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, or white. This is just for people who are on this call to them. Walker, let's start with you on this because I get a sense of the timing, and then I'll have May come follow up, and then Adrian.
Well, for us as an organization, we felt we needed to look at it, this work as more than just making grants to organizations, which we've done for a number of years. We've been part of supporting the Partnership Project, which is the local effort of the Racial Equity Institute for 20 plus years. One of its founders, Nettie Cobe, was a board member of ours, and the work is important to us. But as an organization, we wanted to take it farther than just looking at things from a grants perspective. And so the expanded community giving, we looked at that more than just a project. We institutionalized that work into all aspects of the organization. That committee is now one of our board advisory committees. It's a full-time staff position at the Community Foundation. We created an internal committee looking at our diversity, equity, and inclusion. That ended up leading to a board decision in 2019 of creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And so internally, we were doing what we thought was very important work for laying the groundwork for making this a part of who we are as an organization. And externally, we felt we needed to do more than just look at making grants and do more than just kind of working with diverse donors. We worked with the Chamber of Commerce and the United Way right after the George Floyd murder and other incident in Central Park to begin to get people to sign on to a community pledge that was kind of inspired by a letter that Terry Aiken, the CEO of Cone Health, sent to his employees and his board members talking about we're not going to stand for this anymore. And we, for the first time, were able to get a lot more folks engaged in that work than you typically have before. And I'll expand on more on that as we continue the conversation.
Good. May?
Sure. I think as we continue to work with our group of Black donors, one of the things that we know and recognize is that we have to read reality truthfully of what's going on in the Black community. And that's certainly pre-COVID as well as post-COVID. And it also requires an understanding of our history here in Greensboro. So we have to be honest with ourselves about what really is going on in our community. But also, how has our community historically responded to opportunities, but also the challenges of what's facing us, just as the issues we're facing now. And to look at those times when we were visionary, when we were responsive, but also reactive. And looking honestly at ourselves and saying, who benefits the most from having access to everything that Greensboro has to offer? Again, it's a wonderful mid-sized city. And one of the things that I enjoy about being here versus the large cities that I've lived in, you really have an opportunity to get your arms around what's going on and see the impact of the lives of people that you're touching or organizations that you're touching. So I think that going forward, as we continue our work with Black donors, we want to make sure that we understand our history. Are we reading the realities accurately? And do we understand the culture of our community and how this culture is contributing to the lack of opportunity that people have? I think the second point is that as we were doing our work with expanding community giving, we knew that we needed data because we didn't have any baseline information about donors of color or Black donors. And so in partnership with North Carolina A&T, we conducted our own research because we wanted to use that information in helping us build our strategy as we reached out to donors of color. And so as a result of this research, we were able to learn more about their perceptions, Black giving patterns, and the relevant issues facing our community that they would be willing to support. And so we conducted qualitative focus groups as well as conducted a web-based quantitative survey. And basically what that data showed us is that the Black community is motivated to give when that giving is based on their desire to strengthen the Black community. And also the issues that were of greatest importance to them, and this was back in 2018, related to education, criminal and social justice, economic development, race relations, and health disparities. So having data, reading the reality of what's going on and being honest with ourselves, I think are two ways that we begin to build a strategy for how we transform ourselves. I think a third point that everyone is having conversation about now is the fact that we cannot have any transformational change without engaging the white community. We know that they hold the power structure, and as long as we engage them and bring them along, because any transformation in laws and policies and practices and systems and norms of our society will require their active involvement and engagement. And then the fourth point I would make is that as we move forward to identify areas where we want to invest in the Black community, we have to stay close to those individuals who are most negatively impacted by racist policies and make sure that we get their input and engage them as well.
Thank you. And Adrian, before we transition to you, Emily, if you can start teeing up some of the questions from the audience. And Adrian, I want to, as this, specifically this question of advancing equity, talk to us about it, the importance of it in terms of supporting Black-led organizations or Black-led, just Black leadership.
Sure. Well, you know, one of the things that is important to reiterate is equality is not equity. And equity is going to require greater investment than equality. If we just gave everyone the same measure, we have to appreciate that everyone is not starting from the same originating point. So with that, it's going to require additional investments, but investing in that which is Black-led is going to be more capable of sustaining that change. To make an investment and discount the need for the growth to be internal and led from the African American experience is going to diminish its impact. I think being able to see leadership from within the community, where there's incredible talent, incredible skill set, is able to inspire and energize the subsequent generations. And so to ensure that the efforts that we take are very pointed and intentional to invest in existing organizations that are Black-led, adds a galvanizing effect. It adds a lasting effect. It's an affirming effect. And again, going back to my earlier statement about the points of origination, that's what I believe is needed in order to close some of the gaps. Because we have had a staggered launching from community to community that was not equitable. And so this, I believe, will be very impactful for a lot of psychological as well as financial bases.
Okay, thank you. Emily, as we're navigating this, thank you for your help trying to keep up with the panelists and the questions. I'm gonna rely on you to give me some questions maybe that we can answer. I think she's unmuted or, well.
Okay, now, okay, I'm good now. I was muted by the host, and so I couldn't unmute myself. I have one question that came to my inbox this morning, someone who registered and was unable to attend, and that was for Walker. How does CFGG plan to prioritize giving and grants to organizations run by people of color?
That's a great question, Emily. And I'm going to ask Kevin perhaps to share with everybody a report that came out earlier this week that I saw, and I'm sure my staff hated that I was sending them a request to do work while I was on vacation. I think they were all probably saying, "Aren't you supposed to be on vacation? Quit checking your emails." But this is a report that that came out from a national organization, the National Committee on Responsive Philanthropy, which serves as kind of a critical friend to philanthropy. And by critical friend, I mean it asks hard questions of philanthropy. And in this report, it calls out community foundations for not providing enough support to Black-led organizations. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but it led me to ask our staff the same question. How are we doing? What are we doing as an organization, and how would we look to do this analysis? So our grants team is currently looking at that data, and probably by the end of, hopefully by the end of the month, end of next month, we'll have some answers of that. And I don't think we're going to like what it says. Because I can think through the organizations that we're providing grants to that may work in diverse communities, but they're not Black-led. They may have diverse boards, but they're not Black-led. And so I think it's given us a different lens to look through. That's it will be very telling. There was a group of young Black leaders that got together to give some feedback to Action Greensboro about things that some of the foundations should be doing differently. And one of those recommendations was to invest in Black-led organizations, to invest more in East Greensboro, and give more kind of unrestricted type of grants to those groups to give them the flexibility to do the things that they believe need to be done, not the things that some traditional thinkers may think needs to be done. So it's a great point, and it's a topic of conversation that we'll continue to have. Princess, I saw that you made a comment about that. So I know you'll enjoy reading the report that Kevin has just posted, and we'll continue that conversation.
Thank you. And thanks to Kevin for putting that link. All of you can find that in the chat box there. Ethan, you want me to ask one more question before you continue? Or?
I think for the sake of time, maybe we can take one more before we get to an important announcement.
Right, so I have a question about the announcement, so I'm going to ask a different question right now, which is what are some of the success stories or lessons learned? May, you might be great at answering this one, since the expanding community giving began 5 years ago. Maybe a couple of success stories.
Yeah, I would say just the power of giving circles. I mentioned earlier that the expanded community giving was working with the Asian community, Black community, as well as the Latino community. And what I saw in terms of giving circles, which I mentioned, Ethan introduced us to here in this community, at least for me, I had never heard of it, was to see the power of a community to collect dollars within its own community and then reinvest them back into that community. And we actually had one of our community conversations where the Latino community made public grants to a couple of organizations within their own community. And you could see just the sense of pride. And that, I think, went to the core of what Kellogg is trying to do through the Catalyzing Community Giving initiative. And that is the opportunity for communities of color to use and invest their own resources in their own community, as opposed to always going to others to ask for that support. Now, granted, the amounts of dollars need to increase significantly, but the sense of pride that they had invested their own dollars and then were able to reinvest those into the community was very, very heartwarming and positive. So that's been one of the great learnings of the impact of just those giving circles.
Yeah, and if I can take moderator privilege and just add one of the success stories, I think kind of segueing and tagging along what May said, is that we've been seeing people find their voice, being empowered. And I think we saw that recently when TPAN, Triad Pan Asian American Network, did an op-ed recently that was in the Greensboro News and Record right at the beginning of the pandemic. And that, they said, came a result of them using their platform as donors, but to recognize and share their experience. And several of them shared with us that without this experience, through forming a giving circle, they don't think they would have found their voice to express that. So I think we're seeing that throughout. I can't wait any longer. We've had questions. This is Giving Day. They call Give 828. It culminates with Black Philanthropy Month, and the focus of that is a national initiative to focus on giving back to Black-led organizations and causes. So being a part of in that spirit, May, I'm gonna look to you, and would you tell us a little bit about the historic moment that CFGG is involved in, but more importantly, how Black donors and Black philanthropy is answering some of the questions that we've been talking about today?
Thank you, Ethan. And I am very, very privileged and honored to talk more about this moment and how we are planning to leverage it, and the tremendous support that we have received from members of the Black community and also the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. We are in this moment in time that we feel is full of possibilities, and how we respond to it will help us define what happens to the next generations that are going to follow us. And there's a quote from Dr. Benjamin Mays, who was a minister, civil rights leader, and former president of Morehouse College, that said, "I've only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it. But it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give an account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it." And in this moment of outrage over social justice issues in our country, we all know that it has challenged many of us to think about how we are going to show up in this moment. The pandemic in the last 6 months have been forced upon us. We didn't choose it, but it's up to us how we use it and give an account of it. So today, I am very pleased to announce that in partnership with Community Foundation and a group of visionary Black leaders in our community, we are showing up in this moment by creating a vehicle to advance the mobility of the Black community. And this vehicle is called BIG Equity Fund, Black Investments in Greensboro Equity Fund. It will be administered by CFGG as a philanthropic powerhouse that will transform the well-being of the Black community. It is our way of formalizing giving and creating a permanent fund that will serve the Black community in perpetuity. We believe that this fund will acknowledge that the Black community has and always has had available assets and wealth that has long been ignored. And we also feel like the fund will leverage Black capital to break down the systems that have caused the social, economic, and health disparities that we all know about. And what makes the fund so special is that it was initiated and established with lead gifts from Black donors. And over the last 6 months, we have raised almost $300,000 in commitments as of today, making this fund established by Black people for Black people. And it also holds another unique distinction of being one of the few identity-based philanthropic funds in the South. So we feel like this fund, it will solidify our obligation to make sure that Greensboro is the place that future generations to live. As I mentioned in my introductory comments, I love Greensboro, loved growing up here. And so we want to make sure that Greensboro continues to be a safe community, a vibrant community, and gives everyone the opportunity for mobility. And I think we also know that philanthropic giving is not a new concept for Black people in America, because throughout our history, we have always found ways to support one another and ensure the survival of our communities. And we also know that this history has fostered our commitment to communal giving, whether it's to families and friends, whether it's to our places of worship, and those things continue certainly until today as well. There's an old adage that says success is achieved when preparation meets opportunity. So we feel like we are at that perfect intersection today. And in 2018, when we brought a group of about 30 Black leaders together to have a conversation about Black philanthropy, we began to see the potential of how we could engage in collective philanthropy that benefits us all. And since that time, over the last couple of years, we've been working diligently to establish this fund through face-to-face meetings and vision dinners. And obviously this was pre-COVID with prospective Black donors. So we had already made significant progress laying the foundation for the fund's success when the most recent social justice movement began to unfold. And the community started to ask the question, what can we do? Coupled with all of the foundation work that we had laid, we decided it was now time to accelerate the announcement of this fund to leverage this moment in time, a moment when people are looking to support social justice causes to benefit Black communities. And so we have just been so encouraged by the outpouring of support and inquiries from the community. And we feel like we have been aligned over the last couple of years with the pulse and certainly the future direction of the community. So Community Foundation, ATHN, and the steering committee and of Black community leaders have been important partners in developing this fund. Walker has been an incredible partner from the beginning. He has committed all of the resources of the CFGG staff to ensure its successful launch. And you see our logo, which is being made public today for the first time. And he has also committed the ongoing support of CFGG as we plan for a campaign to raise additional dollars next year. And in addition, Walker's visionary leadership led him to expand Voices at the Table when he hired Ethan. And through Ethan, we have learned a global perspective about Black philanthropy, and it's also opened up our eyes of possibilities as well. And finally, I want to thank the steering committee of visionary Black leaders who have brought an important perspective about our community, the needs of our community, that has helped us shape the vision for this fund, the mission, the values, and the overall framework that we are planning to use for the fund. They are a seasoned group of professionals, business owners, not shy, as you can imagine, and they have just been wonderful, and I have felt some tremendous support from all of you. So I mentioned at the beginning that I got involved because I grew up here. So I feel like this completes my circle of growing up here, retiring here after a corporate career, getting involved in the philanthropic community, and now becoming part of a historic endowment to benefit the Black community. The fund is available to individuals and families who want to build a legacy, and Bishop Starks talked about the importance of legacy. And we believe that we will be able to leverage this tool at the Community Foundation for multi-generational giving. So we are excited about it, as you can imagine, and we look forward to your participation in this important and historic occasion. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you, May. Let me gather myself here and just give us applause. Thank you. And so we would like to make some adjustments, taking note of the time. But I'm going to call on our CFGG board member and steering committee and Big Equity Fund steering committee member, Adrian Starks, to just share with you all a vision and an appeal. And then when we say appeal, we are rushing towards a goal to reach 3 million ultimately. That is open to the community. Many of you have put in the chats, how can you contribute? It is open to community. It's Black founded, Black led, but it's open to the community. And Bishop, if you would just do the thing that you do so well.
Thank you, Adrian. Friends, what I know is that in order to lasting change, we need to make bold moves. And today we've announced a very bold step in the history of Greensboro, but also in the history of, I believe, our lives personally. I believe that if you look at the reports, you'll find that the dollar circulates in the African American the least amount of time of the various people groups. This fund is going to help us to overcome that. But as May said earlier, we can't do this alone. We're going to need the partnership of friends and supporters, and we believe that you can be a part regardless of whether or not you are African American. As I said in my earlier comment, equity demands an increase beyond equality. And so the advancement that we're wanting to make is going to be a powerful tool. It's going to be bold. When we talked about our goals, I was very keen in sharing with the steering committee that we are not going to keep the low, we're going to raise the bar high, because in order to have a lasting impact, it cannot be a small measure. We're going to need to tap into an equitable portion. So what would tomorrow look like if there was a capacity to address disparities that have been incredibly exposed? What would the social ills that have been so prominent in our news? What would it look like? The capacity to make a change and to leave a legacy is completely present in the Big Equity Fund. And you have your fingerprint on that. This is an exciting time. This can help us introduce a paradigm, and we really do invite you to look within your heart and your mind and just how would be part of the initiative. We think that we can go $1 million with your help. You help us. I trust many of you have already asked that question, and I want to give and we do that.
All right, Bishop, some of it, I got some feedback. There was audio difficulties, but we will make sure you'll have a chance to do an appeal again. With that, I think we all got it, the message. Kevin, if you can bring up the website for where this is. This is essentially what we want to direct your attention to. Is a lot of people have asked, how can they give, make their contribution? You can go to the website and learn more about the Big Equity Fund, but you also can contribute and give, and you can contact anyone on the development staff, the steering committee. This is going to be a campaign. Again, like we said, we would like to get 3 million, and as I've been around the steering committee and long enough, and we plan to exceed 3 million. But this is brand new. This is the site where you can learn more. Several of you have asked, when will we make? We will not have a grant making cycle per se, but instead of a grant making cycle, we're calling it a community investment cycle. We are going to be investing in the community. That will be coming out. As you can imagine, we're developing that, bringing that together with the steering committee. As May has mentioned earlier, we'll be very focused and intentional in using data. I can tell you now, the focus will be, we want to go what we're calling mid and upstream philanthropy, which is what I like to just say, to be very creative and innovative with our investments. Yes, the site is ready. The how to donate tab is right there. We'll make available the link, the direct link to go to reach this. And for those of you all who are fund holders, you can give through your donor advised funds. It's a simple inter-fund transfer. And as always, we ask, the best endorsement is word of mouth and spreading this in the community. We will also be having a marketing campaign, as you can imagine, that will be rolling out, and you will be hearing about this series, but more importantly, this announcement in local media. And what else am I getting? I'm so excited, if you can't tell. But this is wonderful. And again, I want to reiterate and say what May, in case you missed it, we have had a goal that we set for August, for Black Philanthropy Month, to have 250,000 donors, Black donors, make the lead gifts to reach this goal. We have surpassed that. We're approaching 300,000, and we want to ask you all to help us get closer to that. But more importantly, stay tuned because we think we'll be having some more important announcements coming in September. Walker, I would be remiss to give you an opportunity to say the importance of this in the history of the Community Foundation in Greensboro before we close out.
Well, thank you, Ethan. I'm so excited. Words are even hard to say. This has never been done in Greensboro. It's rarely been done in other communities across the country. And what makes it so unique, this is just not another effort that folks have come together and that's going to die down in a couple years. And it's an endowment. It's permanent. It is forever. An endowment, someone has once said, makes the ordinary extraordinary. And that's what this is. It is absolutely extraordinary. And if you think about the impact on our community, about where we are today and in these times, it's an effort that's being Black-led, that's Black-funded, to fund Black issues defined by Black leaders. That's a statement of what's important to Greensboro, and it's something that we all need to get behind, and we will. The Community Foundation, our board will be considering a major investment in this effort at our September meeting. We are committed to the work. We're investing our staff time, we're investing our discretionary resources in making this effort successful. And we've seen it be successful. Other models that have been said, the Women Endowment is an example, the Public Art Endowment, the Future Fund Endowment, about when folks are coming together to do something extraordinary, extraordinary things can happen. And this is going to change the way things are going to be getting done in Greensboro with leadership. So I'm excited about it. I wrote a letter to call it Ignite the Comfortable to respond to this pandemic and what are we doing. And in that letter, I said we've gone through these kind of situations in the past, but unfortunately, when the noise quiets down, all the comfortable, privileged white friends of mine go back to our privileged world. And our Black friends are still struggling with the same things they have been doing every day. What makes this different is this time the white community needs to come forth and not let the noise die down. We need to look at policies that need to be changed. We need to look at how we invest our resources. And this is an effort that needs white community to invest their resources as well. It's permanent and we need to do that. I'm going to let the last word be May and Adrian. I know I'm never going to speak last after a bishop and certainly never going to speak last after May. So as our time was winding down, I'm going to turn it back to two extraordinary leaders to close us out.
I am just privileged to be a part of a group of Black visionary leaders who caught our vision. And we don't have our business case completed yet. We don't have collateral material yet, but there were like-minded Black leaders in our community who all had been thinking similarly as it relates to what can I do? What can we do as a community to advance the Black community? And I think, as I said earlier, it was the right time of intersection for all of these things to come together. So we will be proactively continuing our work. We are finalizing our charter and everything else that we need to do structurally and organizationally in line with CFGG. And we'll continue to put our strategy together as it relates to the larger campaign. And we will be communicating that more broadly. So we just say stay tuned and that you guys stay on this journey with us.
And finally, for myself, again, I just want to reiterate how incredibly impactful it is in terms of when the dollar can remain in a particular community, how it can meet and address and meet the needs that that community has. The Big Equity Fund is a fund that's going to remain in the Black community. It's going to continue to be present to address many of the issues and the concerns, many of the ills, many of the the dreams that lie within the Black community. And so I love the name. We wrestled with this name. It speaks volumes to our hearts. We've had big problems, but now we are going to have a big vehicle for solutions. And I think that as we continue to dream big, the future is bright. The future is an empty canvas waiting for the artistry that many of the African American community is known to possess. And so I just want to say thank you to Walker and to the Community Foundation. I want to say thank you for your leadership, for your bold step. I want to say thank you to Ethan for your tireless work. You have been a blessing in ways that have yet to be revealed to the greater community. To May, you're top notch. Your leadership is tremendous, and I've enjoyed working quietly. I have longed for this, and this is but a speck. As big as it is, it's a speck of what is in my heart. And I intend to let this be a part of my legacy that we leave, because as I said, though I didn't originate here like May, it is now my home. It is the birthplace of all of my children. And to know that we're leaving something like this behind for them just empowers me and almost moves me to tears. Like I heard Princess Johnson say, she's almost moved to tears. It'll be wonderful to cry tears of joy because of a work like this. So thank you all, and God bless you.
All right. Let the church whosoever move, please. Thank you. And one thing I did neglect to mention is that, and just to be clear, this is open and we're looking for allies who also can be part of the visionary donors to this effort. With that, I know we've run over, but I think it's a time well spent. I look to Emily and staff folks to let me know that I do what I was supposed to do, and we proceed. And Emily, that's it. She's muted, so I think I will take this, and I am being told that this is, reminder again, this is available on our website, and transcripts are available as well, specifically.
And on Facebook.
And on Facebook and all those things. If there are any questions, just let us know. Go forward, continue to celebrate Black Philanthropy Month. And we think this is a great way to kick it off. And we look forward to keeping you all engaged and with us as we make this journey to make Greensboro great.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.